Bill and Oprah sitting in a tree. Kissin. I knew I shouldn't have led with that, but I did it anyway. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is Right Angle, and just on Monday, after President Oprah's inaugural speech at the Golden Globes, Bill Kristol went on Twitter. By the way, Bill Kristol is the conservative commenter and one of the leaders of the Never Trump Brigade. He went on Twitter, and you might have thought this was a joke. I'm going to read this to you, and I'll tell you why it's not a joke. He went on Twitter and he said, Oprah, sounder on economics than Bernie Sanders, understands middle America better than Elizabeth Warren, less touchy-feely than Joe Biden, more pleasant than Andrew Cuomo, more charismatic than John Hickenlooper, hashtag I'm with her. Now, all those are very low bars that he set in his comparisons to other Democrats. But then Kristol went on a series of tweets explaining why, he would support Oprah Winfrey against Donald Trump. Again, he's supposed to be a conservative in the 2020 presidential election. Scott, I say this really reveals something about the Never Trumpers, who, which I flirted with the Never Trump movement about a year and a half ago after the Colorado primary. But these unreformed and unrepentant Never Trumpers, they are now promoting people they would never have promoted before Trump, and even adopting policy positions that they never would have adopted before Trump, that somehow this man is so odious that they are against tax cuts and all these other conservative policy positions. How do you square 30 or 40 years in public life defending positions that you give up like that just because somebody you didn't like got your party's nomination?
Well, just the thought of Oprah Winfrey as president of the United States makes me want to jump up and down on a couch and, maybe, start pointing to people going, you win an entitlement, and you win an entitlement, and you.
So you win a drone strike.
I think it's like the answer to every question. This reminds me of the old joke that Sunday school, the answer to every question in Sunday school is the same. And so a frustrated Sunday school teacher once asked his third grade class and said, finally getting frustrated with the kids' responses to everything, said, what's gray and has a long furry tail and hides acorns? And one of the little boys in the class raised his hand and said, well, it sounds like a squirrel, but I'm going to say Jesus. And so in this situation, I think the answer to everything is Donald Trump. I mean, the reason why a guy like Bill Kristol can go from being a relatively stalwart editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard, who prided himself on the fact that almost nobody but the Washington Beltway class read the Weekly Standard or pretended to read it, to being able to make some statement like this. And I think basically all bets are off. Donald Trump became president of the United States. Yeah. Somehow, incredibly, in the face of, from the establishment's point of view, if this can happen, well, who has a chance against somebody like Donald Trump? He's the reason why he's there in their minds is that he's a big star. He's a big TV guy, Who's going to beat the big star? Another big star. And so this is why Oprah has a chance. And I think in Bill Kristol's mind, he's willing to vote for somebody who's a Democrat rather than be allied with somebody who professes to be a Republican and yet doesn't stand for anything that Bill Kristol thinks the Republican Party stands for.
Hey, Scott, let me give you a follow-up here. One of the big complaints against Trump from the Never Trumpers and Democrats was that he was, a TV show host. And the minute a TV show host who's a Democrat shows that he signs a presidential life, they're all jumping on the Oprah bandwagon. How do you square that?
Because the establishment Republicans are defined by one thing and one thing only, the desire to say that they're part of the winning team. And even if that means that they abandon their own principles and their own party in order to hitch their wagon to a star that can win, they're willing to do that. And I think that Bill Kristol, while I believe that he still clings to his principles, I think he thinks it would be better off to vote for a Democrat like Oprah Winfrey and not sully the Republican Party further. Again, I'm expressing all of this in terms that I think Kristol sees it.
Yes. Okay.
Is that crystal clear?
Thank you for that, Scott, and well played, sir. Bill, I went on Twitter yesterday after this Bill Kristol thing, and I came up with a plan to get President Oprah in 5 easy steps without having to go through one of those messy election things or even waiting until 2020. Step 1, the Wolf Book wins a Pulitzer. Step 2, Trump submits resignation to a tearful Steve Bannon. Step 3, new president Mike Pence accidentally electrocutes himself while reprogramming gays. Step 4, something Paul Ryan in the House, leading to Step 5, Oprah. Is that any less ridiculous than what we've seen out of Bill Kristol and the Hollywood progressives in the last 48 hours?
Well, when you put it that way, it just seems practically inevitable.
Right? Why hasn't it happened yet?
Is it kind of in line with what we talked about on Scott's show about presenting a series of points and leaving out all of the other little what-ifs, and so on? I think the 2 things I'd like to say about this are, first of all, I thought his first tweet actually made sense. If you gave me a choice of Oprah Winfrey versus Elizabeth Warren. Oprah Winfrey is an astute business person, billionaire, I think, certainly high hundreds of millions of dollars, and
about
basically what she's going through, hard work and so on. So there's that, and less touchy-feely than Joe Biden. And of all the 5 Democrats or whatever he listed, she's better than all of them. So far, so good. But then this business of what you talked about, where you go out and actually make the case for this. The lesson of this last year for me was pretty clear, and the lesson is actually, I've just been reading a lot of Shakespeare lately, since I'm finished with my Chaucer. But one thing I notice is that one thing that Shakespeare seems to understand in all of his tragedies is that the fatal flaw that causes a tragic fall in a character is pride. It's always pride. In Lear, it's pride. He wants his daughters to say lovely things about him, and one of them says, "I'll love you half as much when I'm married because I love my husband the other half." And for this, he banishes her and loses his kingdom, and all of these things happen. And the same for Coriolanus and so on. Pride, unwillingness to admit you are wrong or show humility, and it's punished quite severely in the case of Titus Andronicus.
Well, it's a horrible play, but great movie, Julie Taymor with... anyway, go ahead.
In any event, it's pride. And when you see somebody like Bill Kristol doing this, he is doing it out of a sinful kind of pride. And it's the pride of I am the last virtuous person on earth. That's the pride. I am the last conservator of these values that we all once shared before all of you sold out, and I am the paragon of virtue who alone understands the plight of the Palestinian people, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. It's virtue signaling for conservatives, and it's pride. He doesn't have to like Donald Trump. He's perfectly entitled to hate Donald Trump and criticize Donald Trump as we criticize him here, and we praise him when he does a good job. But this idea that I'm a Chamberlain man, and the election of this rascal Winston Churchill means that I'm an Adolf Hitler man. This is the kind of pride that it brings down big people, and I suspect that he will not be soon cured of this, because usually the cure for this kind of pride is smashing humiliation delivered routinely and emphatically by life that is not particularly concerned about how you feel about things.
Yeah, and there's probably no organization more prideful than the mainstream media, and they just take Trump's bait every single time, don't they? Listen, folks, I found what seemed to be an unrelated story. This came out yesterday. Steve Hilton, one of former British Prime Minister David Cameron's closest advisors on Fox News, now apparently he's got a show or something, he said, "My old boss thought Obama was one of the most narcissistic, self-absorbed people he'd ever dealt with. He went on to say, Obama never listened to anyone, always thought he was smarter than every expert in the room, and treated every meeting as an opportunity to lecture everyone else. This led to real-world disasters like Syria and the rise of ISIS. So you're thinking, well, what does this Obama thing have to do with Kristol and Trump? And, well, it doesn't, except for the thing that Hilton said next. He said the real world, those real-world results, didn't matter to the elites. Hilton said, for them, it's all about style and tone, not substance and results. Donald Trump offends the elites aesthetically, like a piece of art that's not to their taste. So yep. I would just like to say to Bill Kristol, who deserves a lot of respect. He's gotten a lot of things done for the conservative movement over his career. I think he's just lost the thread. Bill Kristol, what you've done is elevated your own personal taste above your own beliefs. You've made snobbery. You've turned snobbery into a governing philosophy, and that's a betrayal of all the things that you've professed to believe. And don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when the deplorables treat you right back. Okay, Bill? I hope you learned something from this. Please watch. Anyway, thank you for watching, and thanks to the members of BillWhittle.com for making this possible. We'll see you next time.